जैसा कि पिछले वीकेंड, आई थिंक लास्ट टू लास्ट वीकेंड वी हैड डिस्कस्ड that the overall sector is divided into, almost in the listed space there would be more than 60-70 companies. uh, but what we have tried to do is, divide the entire sector into subsectors and divide those subsectors into companies, so that will basically help everyone to understand what's happening in this sector. और आई थिंक जो पहला पार्ट था इस वेबिनार का, जो एक दो वीकेंड पहले हुआ था, उसमें हमने ब्रॉडर मैक्रो थीम्स डिस्कस करी थी कि ब्रॉडली इंडिया में ऐसा क्या हो रहा है जिसकी वजह से इस सेक्टर में गवर्नमेंट का बहुत ज्यादा एक्सपेंसेस बढ़ने वाले हैं। एंड क्योंकि गवर्नमेंट का फोकस बहुत है, तो वो ऑल दैट इज एक्चुअली स्टार्टेड ट्रांसलेटिंग in top line, bottom line, margins, working capital, or almost all listed companies. That has also contributed to, multifold returns in this sector over the last, couple of years. Although recently there is again a downturn, and we will discuss that also. And happy to take questions also if anyone has any questions on any specific thing. Happy to take them in the end of the webinar. Once we finish the presentation. But meanwhile, feel free to post it on the Q&A section. So I think this is the part 2 of the webinar, but I'll quickly recap what has already happened in the part 1. So part 1 जो कि हमने 2 हफ्ते पहले देखा था, where we discussed, the basics of the sector, which was power T&D value chain. कि इस value chain में कौन कौन से लोग, right from generation to distribution, who are the companies who are working in this value chain, or what is the components and parts of those value chain. We had discussed that. Then we had discussed the government data around it, what government has published, and we had dissected the entire government data into total addressable market for different sectors. I think ये हमने last presentation में discuss किया था. I'll give you a very quick recap of this. Starting from value chain, it starts from generation to transmission lines to substations, and then transmission substations, distribution substations, and finally goes to your households or industries. ये एक ब्रॉडर वैल्यू चेन होती है सेक्टर की. ये गवर्नमेंट डेटा है जिसमें गवर्नमेंट का एनईपी डेटा है, अक्टूबर 2024 में जो रिलीज हुआ था, नेशनल इलेक्ट्रिसिटी प्लान. उसके हिसाब से कौन सी ट्रांसमिशन लाइंस में हाईएस्ट ग्रोथ आने वाली है एंड कौन सी सब स्टेशन में हाईएस्ट ग्रोथ आने वाली है. सो यू कैन इजीली सी that the highest growth is coming in the respective sectors. For HVDC, for 765 and 400 kV substations and transmission lines. So clearly, even from the government data, it is visible that bulk of the growth is actually, or the fastest growth is happening in higher kV part of the business of the segment. एंड अगेन हमने पूरा 9 लाख करोड़ जो गवर्नमेंट का ट्रांसमिशन का खर्चा है 2032 तक, ये तो सिर्फ ट्रांसमिशन का है. अगर इसमें डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन भी जोड़ लें और कुछ इम्प्रॉम्प्टो जैसे अनाउंसमेंट्स आते रहते हैं, जैसे कि हमने लास्ट प्रेजेंटेशन में डिस्कस करा था कि हम अंडर वाटर सी केबलिंग डाल रहे हैं सऊदी तक, एंड वी आर डूइंग एक्सपेंडिचर इन यूएचवी अल्ट्रा हाई वोल्टेज ऑफ 1100 केवी. उस सबको अगर हम जोड़ लें तो ये एक्चुअली खर्चा करीब 15-16 लाख करोड़ का है, जो 2032 तक गवर्नमेंट को करना है. And this expenditure is divided into transmission lines, substations, HVDC and others. And इसको हमने पूरे total addressable market को we have broken it down to the levels of tower, conductor, transformer, HVDC, and a lot of other components which goes into the entire T&D थीम. एंड ये एनुअली इतना खर्चा होना चाहिए, ये हमने एक एवरेज नंबर दिया आपको. ये नंबर अभी फिलहाल एनुअली कम होगा, बट जब वी विल रीच नियर FY 28-29 ये खर्चा ज्यादा हो जाएगा. सो मे बी करंटली साल में टावर सेल्स माइट नॉट बी 20,000 crore, दे माइट बी 10 or 15,000 crore, बट टुवर्ड्स द एंड ऑफ द FY 2032 के पास हम जब तक पहुंचेंगे, तब this will be higher amount. So on an average 20,000 करोड़ का साल का खर्चा है टावर्स में, ट्रांसफॉर्मर्स में, कंडक्टर्स में अराउंड 12,500 करोड़ का खर्चा है साल का. दिस इज द एनुअल total addressable market which is available to all these listed guys, as well as a large portion of the unlisted people also. Um, Now, after discussing, basically part one, which was basically the recap of last presentation, we will actually now shift our focus to micros. अभी तक हमने सिर्फ macros discuss करे थे, जिसमें हमने गवर्नमेंट डेटा, टोटल एड्रेसेबल मार्केट ये समझा था, एंड ये समझा था कि इस सेक्टर में इतना खर्चा क्यों हो रहा है, गवर्नमेंट क्यों कर रही है। अब हम एक्चुअली ये देखेंगे कि इसकी वजह से देर आर अबाउट 7 सब सेक्टर्स which have been impacted, and today we are discussing 3 subsectors out of those 7 subsectors. And what we plan is, in the next webinar we will discuss the remaining, we will discuss the remaining 4 subsectors. So आज का, for the next 1.5 to 2 hours, we will only be discussing about transformers, cable conductor sectors, and HVDC, and there are various MNC companies who also work even in the HVDC sector. So we will primarily, talk about companies and sectors, what is happening in the transformer, cable conductors, and HVDC. I hope this is clear, and this is just building upon our macro understanding of the sector, जो हमने last webinar में भी discuss करा था. So let's talk first about transformer sector. So transformers के बारे में, जैसा आपको पता होगा कि it's a it's a capital good equipment जो कि इलेक्ट्रिसिटी को स्टेप अप या स्टेप डाउन करने के काम आता है. ये स्टेप अप या स्टेप डाउन क्यों होता है? आई एम श्योर यू विल बी अवेयर, लास्ट वीक वी डिस्कस दैट जब इलेक्ट्रिसिटी जनरेट होती है तो वो एक कम केवी में जनरेट होती है, तो उसको स्टेप अप करके हायर केवी में लेके जाते हैं फॉर ट्रांसपोर्टेशन ऑफ दैट इलेक्ट्रिसिटी, and the electricity is transported at a higher kV, and then again at the distribution side you cannot basically transfer that electricity, which is a high current voltage, to households, so you again step it down, and there are 2 or 3 legs of stepping down. उसको step down करके you finally deliver it to the ultimate customer. सो ये जो स्टेप अप स्टेप डाउन का सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट काम है पूरे वैल्यू चेन में या पूरे इकोसिस्टम में, ये ट्रांसफॉर्मर्स करते हैं. एंड विद इन अ ट्रांसफॉर्मर, अगर आप उसको डीपली, इफ यू डीकंस्ट्रक्ट अ ट्रांसफॉर्मर, जो कि आपको यहाँ पे एक पिक्चर भी दिख रही होगी कि दिस इज अ ट्रांसफॉर्मर विच इज बीइंग डीकंस्ट्रक्टेड, और उसके अंदर के जो पार्ट्स होते हैं ट्रांसफॉर्मर के, विच आर ऑल्दो अ ट्रांसफॉर्मर हैज अ लॉट ऑफ पार्ट्स, but here we have kind of discussed main parts which are useful for transformer manufacturers, as well as there are some listed companies also around these parts. Hence we wanted to kind of deconstruct कि ट्रांसफार्मर में एक्चुअल में होता क्या है. सो ट्रांसफार्मर में some of the most important thing is actually the core of the transformer, which means कि जब ये पावर स्टेप अप और स्टेप डाउन होती है, तो ये कोर और उस कोर के पास में वाइंडिंग वायर्स होते हैं, जिसकी वजह से ये लोग कर पाते हैं स्टेप अप एंड स्टेप डाउन. इसका एक बहुत ही टेक्निकल प्रोसेस होता है, लेकिन एज इन्वेस्टर्स हम ये समझ लें कि एक CRGO स्टील करके एक बहुत स्पेशलाइज स्टील आता है, जो इंडिया में फिलहाल कोई नहीं बना रहा है. मोस्ट ऑफ द CRGO स्टील इज एक्चुअली इम्पोर्टेड फ्रॉम चाइना टू इंडिया, and this steel is imported, and this steel is then cutted and slitted in ways where it can be fitted in a transformer. इसको स्लिट किया जाता है, जैसे किसी भी आप मेटल को स्लिट एंड कट कर सकते हो. इफ यू हैव looked at some metal companies, they would do that. So there are a couple of companies who are listed who actually उनका काम ही है कि वो CRGO कॉइल को सोर्स करेंगे चाइना से, इंडिया में इंपोर्ट करेंगे, उसको कट स्लिट करेंगे, उसको प्रॉपर डिजाइन में करके उसको ट्रांसफार्मर कंपनीज को डिलीवर करेंगे, एंड देन ट्रांसफार्मर कंपनीज विल एक्चुअली use that core, which is the CRGO steel, and wind through winding wires. These are copper wires, जिनकी वजह से they will be able to step up or step down the electricity. So I hope the function of a core and a winding wire is clear. This is core is really the core of the transformer. जो main काम जो transformer करता है वो core और winding wire करते हैं. So I hope this is clear. This is also written here. You can read it, but in a very journal language, I have explained to you what is the function of a core and a winding wire. Then we have, a tank where all this is stored. A tank also protects, winding wires and cores from a lot of external dirt, moisture damage, which can happen. So it is kind of a body of the transformer, which is a metal body. Then we have something which is very interesting. is called bushing. Actually bushing के साथ एक दो चीजें और हैं, but I'll first discuss about bushing because there is a very unique special player who manufactures only bushing. So bushing actually क्या करता है कि जब हाई वोल्टेज करंट अंदर आता है और एग्जिट होता है इस ट्रांसफार्मर से, तो उसको रेगुलेट करता है, उसको इंसुलेट करता है, which means that if a current is higher than the required current, it will cut off the supply of the current. And similarly, if the current which is exiting the system is higher or lower, then it will cut off the system. So bushing is one of the most critical components. And uh, a very special thing about bushing is it is majorly used in higher kV transformers. तो जैसे एक हायर केवी ट्रांसफॉर्मर बनाना भी एक स्पेशलाइज्ड चीज है, एक नीश काम है, उसी तरह से उनकी बुशिंग्स बनाना भी एक नीश काम है. और एक्चुअली डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन ट्रांसफार्मर विच आर लोअर केवी ट्रांसफार्मर्स, उनमें बुशिंग्स बहुत ही कम काम आती है. सो ये एक बुशिंग का एक इंपॉर्टेंट काम है. इसके अलावा we have converters and radiators. I think converter is mainly, there is some oil known as transformer oil. It kind of allows that oil to expand and contract as per the heat generated. तो एक तरह का uh, you know um, एक तरह का it becomes like a backstop to regulate heat in a transformer. And similarly, radiator also is someone who regulates heat from hot oil. इन दोनों का काम सिमिलर लगेगा आपको, बट दे हैव डिफरेंट लोकेशंस विद इन द ट्रांसफॉर्मर. दे आर डूइंग स्लाइटली डिफरेंट डिफरेंट थिंग्स एंड वर्क्स, so that the failure doesn't happen in a transformer. So एक बिजली आप basically step up step down कर रहे हैं. You can think it's a very complex process, and hence all these parts are very important. And if you know some of the listed companies, let's say transformer rectifiers in India, they are actually now backward integrating into manufacturing their own radiators and their own cores and winding wires also. So किसी भी एक ट्रांसफॉर्मर मैन्युफैक्चरर नॉर्मली ये सब चीजें आउटसोर्स करता है, किसी और B2B वेंडर से खरीदता है एंड अपने यहाँ पे असेंबली इंस्टॉल करता है. लेकिन some very good marquee companies have also gone to a level where they have backward integrated this process, and they are themselves manufacturing bushings, radiators, cores, and winding wires. Trill being one case in point, but there are some other listed companies also who are trying to do that. Main reason of backward integrating, I think for companies it makes sense to secure their supply chain. And second, it is also a margin accretive activity for them. If they are buying from outside, they'll obviously be able to manufacture in-house at a lower rate. That is the whole intention. Otherwise, no one will go for a backward integration of these products. These are, fairly, some products are fairly complex. For some products are, kind of regular commodity products. So whenever you study a sector, or, you study a particular, capital good, you first deconstruct it. Usko aap, just go on the field and speak to people. And transformer is something which every one of you would have seen somewhere or other in your life. So अगर आप उसको एकदम खोल के देखोगे तो this is all which will be visible. And this is very interesting because a lot of listed companies already kind of work in this sector and are doing backward integration. I think moving on to the next uh, aspect of looking at transformers. Uh, Transformers again are used in a wide variety of. I think there was a. Okay. Transformers are actually used in a very wide variety of applications. So, for example, there are instrument transformers, power transformers, distribution, and furnace duty. Actually, there are maybe 4 or 5 more types of transformers, but as per the function लोगों ने इनका नाम रख दिया है. So power transformer का मेन काम होता है स्टेप अप या स्टेप डाउन करना और बड़ी एट अ हायर पावर. डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन ट्रांसफार्मर का काम होता है स्टेप डाउन करना मेनली. डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन लेवल पे वो लगता है, क्योंकि आई थिंक लास्ट वीक इफ यू हैव अटेंडेड, distribution is just distribution and transmission is actually heavy lifting the heavy power. So distribution is considered a slightly commodity business versus transmission, which is actually a very high niche business. And hence कोई भी कंपनी बोले कि मैं डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन ट्रांसफार्मर बना रही हूँ, तो आप ये समझ जाना कि वो बहुत लोग बना रहे हैं. इट्स अ वेरी कमोडिटी प्रोडक्ट एंड दैट प्रोडक्ट हैज अ लॉट ऑफ सप्लायर्स. यू नो there is no dearth of suppliers in the unlisted market or in the unorganized market. Anyone can make a furnace duty or a distribution transformer versus a higher kV transformer. The ones which are on the left are actually higher kV transformers. These are very niche products with a very limited amount of suppliers. And जैसा कि हमने government data देखा था in the previous presentation, government data also indicates that the maximum growth rate is happening in higher kV. And higher kV में ही minimum suppliers है. Suppliers are very limited. Versus in lower kV जो कि commodity products जिनको हम बोलते हैं, उसका reason ही ये है कि उसमें बहुत सारे suppliers हैं, इसलिए वो commodity है. तो lower kV में जो demand है वो कम है. Versus higher kV demand is very high. Is actually, if you dissect the government data, this is what I showed you in the beginning of this presentation as well, that bulk of the demand and bulk of the CAGR growth, highest CAGR growth, is actually coming in higher kV transformers. And hence we have divided the entire transformers into two broad areas. One are very niche transformers which have very limited suppliers. The other one is a commodity product, and hence this will also be visible to you in the listed space. If I ask you a question that there's a recently listed company called Atlanta Electricals, which is into higher kV transformers, why does it get a higher PE versus someone who is producing a lower kV transformer? So this is very evident in the listed markets itself that higher kV is getting a higher multiple because market is already knowing all this, what we are discussing. Market knows everything. It's the most efficient animals out there, and hence a lot of people also say that it is difficult to beat market because अच्छी चीज का पी अच्छा ही होता है. Whatever is niche will always command a higher PE. And hence, when people say me that, a transformer company which is at 10 PE is more attractive versus a transformer company at 40-50 PE, my natural question will be to, वो 10 PE वाली का काम क्या है? अगर उसका काम commodity है तो उसका 10 PE justified है, right? Versus 40 PE का काम बहुत niche है. So maybe that 40 PE is justified for that. So, just giving out some anecdotes from the listed space. Hence, I think, broadly you can classify higher kV as niche product, limited suppliers, and lower kV as commodity products, many suppliers. This is broadly, dissection of the entire space. I think moving on to our next slide on this, I think if you broadly understand the transformer space now, what are some of the key aspects? ऐसी क्या मेन चीजें हैं जो आप किसी ट्रांसफॉर्मर कंपनी में देखना चाहोगे? जैसे मैं एग्जांपल के तौर पे दूं कि आप हॉस्पिटल्स में क्या देखना चाहोगे, या आप कोई स्टील कंपनी में क्या देखना चाहोगे, या आप रिटेल कंपनी में क्या देखना चाहोगे, विल बी एंटायरली डिफरेंट वर्सेस अ ट्रांसफॉर्मर और अ कैपिटल गुड्स कंपनी में आप क्या देखना चाहोगे, राइट? Just to assess a company, the metrics are very different for all the industries. So हॉस्पिटल में आप शायद आरपॉप ग्रोथ देखते हो, या उसके हॉस्पिटल मेट्रोज में है, या टीयर 2 टीयर 3 सिटीज में ये देखते हो. रिटेल में आप ये देखते हो कि सेम स्टोर सेल्स ग्रोथ कितनी है, स्टोर एक्सपेंशन कितना है. उसी तरह से ट्रांसफॉर्मर में आप क्या देखते हो, ये 4 पॉइंट्स हैं जो आई थिंक वी हैव बीन लुकिंग एट. एंड ऑब्वियसली ऑर्डर बुक, बिल्ड टू बुक, वो सब चीजें is natural, but these 4 things will help you to really identify differentiated players versus commodity players. और ये 4 चीजें क्या है? पहली चीज तो यही है कि वो बनाता क्या है, वो कौन सा केवी का ट्रांसफार्मर बनाता है, या वो कौन सा ट्रांसफार्मर बनाता है. एंड if someone is at low kV, consider it as commodity. Someone is at high kV, consider it as very special. And a third type of transformer which is very renowned nowadays is called IDT transformer, जो कि renewable energy को convert करता है. तो लोगों को शुरू में ये लगता था जब a very famous company called Danish Power got listed, and there are some unlisted companies also in that space. When they were manufacturing IDT transformer, a lot of people thought that IDT is also like higher kV, बहुत कम suppliers होंगे इसके, it's a different technology. But वैसा नहीं है. IDT transformers बहुत सारे लोग बना रहे हैं, and in fact if you just check out the unlisted space, or in general आप अगर just dial पे भी query करोगे IDT transformer की, तो you will find hundreds of suppliers actually. So while the market was of the view at the time of listing that IDT is a special kind of transformer, I can very humbly, or say that as per our research, IDT is also fairly commodity, like lower kV transformers. And hence, there are you need to look at, the transformer type, कि वो बना क्या रहा है, what is the product, is the product niche enough. The second thing which you want to look at is export versus domestic revenue share. Now there's a company called Shilchar which is very high on exports, and exports fetch you almost 2x 2.5x kind of margins, EBITDA margins, versus domestic. और इसीलिए सारी कंपनी जो लिस्टेड है वो आज ये बोल रही है कि हम एक्सपोर्ट मार्केट को टैप करना चाहते हैं, बट इट इज वेरी इजियर सेड देन डन. एक्सपोर्ट मार्केट का अप्रूवल साइकिल ही 5-6 साल का है. तो शिलचार एक्चुअली स्टार्टेड वर्किंग ऑन एक्सपोर्ट्स प्री कोविड, and if you see the transformer requirements in the US are far higher than in India. US में if you go through con calls of G Vernova, Hitachi, which is the US listed entity, they will be telling you that there is a 6 to 8 years of waiting period of transformers. And wo waiting period, how can you cut it short is by giving some booking fees. Even if you go give a booking fees, you will be only be able to get it after 4 to 5 years of the placing of order and giving a booking fees to them. So India mein transformer situation is not that bad, but in the US it is very bad because bulk of the data center capacity is actually coming, and bulk of the AI, artificial intelligence led power growth, is actually happening in the US. And hence you will see that क्योंकि यूएस या और डेवलप्ड कंट्रीज में ट्रांसफॉर्मर्स की 5-5 8-8 साल की वेटिंग पीरियड है, इसलिए ट्रांसफॉर्मर मैन्युफैक्चरिंग कंपनीज हु आर एक्चुअली एक्सपोर्टिंग have a much higher margin versus someone who is a domestic facing company. We will see this in numbers, and if you quickly open up screener and look at EBITDA margins for Shilchar versus for Trill or for any other transformer company for that matter, Shilchar is at the top, right? Despite working in a lower kV transformer, Shilchar is able to get the highest margins because it has the highest export sales as a percentage of total sales. So this is a very key thing to look at for analyzing any transformer company. Next, I think next thing is capacity expansion. Almost everyone I know in the listed space, and maybe everyone in the unlisted space also, the companies which we have been tracking, are doing capacity expansion. And the simple reason is T&D's government's T&D expenditure will rise from here, and hence we will need more distribution as well as power transformer. So lower kV transformer की भी डिमांड है and higher kV की भी है. तो हर जगह कैपेसिटी एक्सपेंशन हो रहा है. बट बात ये है कि लोअर केवी में सप्लाई बहुत जल्दी कैचअप कर जाएगी वर्सेस हायर केवी में, क्योंकि बहुत ही लिमिटेड सप्लायर्स हैं, तो सप्लाई उतनी जल्दी कैचअप नहीं कर पाएगी. सो यू वांट टू लुक एट इन द ऑल द लिस्टेड स्पेस कि किसने कितना कैपेसिटी एक्सपेंशन अनाउंस किया है, कौन कितना अग्रेसिव है, और मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंटली हाउ अर्ली इज समवन्स कैपेसिटी एक्सपेंशन कमिंग ऑनलाइन. So if a company like Voltamp or Shilchar, they are saying their capacity will become only online in FY28, FY27, versus Trill, who's saying 6 months from here, Atlanta, who's saying maybe a 6 months to a year from here. So किसी की capacity जल्दी लाइव हो रही है, उसके numbers जल्दी आएंगे. Market will definitely reward it earlier, versus some of the other players. And lastly, we definitely look at margins and working capital. You will obviously see in all the players, there are certain players with very high margin and high working capital, but there are certain players which have very lean, working capital and decent margin. So we will definitely give good marks for someone who has a very lean working capital versus someone who has very high working capital. And margins may again, commodity companies will not make high margins. So maybe someone like Bharat Bijli's margins will never be equal to Trill's margins, or margin is also a factor of export import. So if Shilchar exports bulk of its revenue, I think 40-50% more than that, hence their margins no one else can compete. So these are broadly 4 points or 4 things which we look at when we actually analyze a transformer company. There can be some other points also, like build to book, which is a metric which is widely used in capital goods, which is basically means आपके पास order book कितनी है versus your current revenues. How much years of order book do you have? It is a fairly easy metric to grasp. Hence, we have not included it here. But apart from these four metrics, I think if you have covered this all in depth, and this will what we will cover for 5 6 listed companies in the transformer space, you can apply these learnings in some of the other listed companies as well. So I think moving on to our next slide. From here, we actually start individual companies. Um, First, starting with really the leader of the space, which is Trill, Transformer and Rectifier India Limited. So this is the actually about 6 months back, or this was the only higher kV transformer manufacturing company. Recently, another company called Atlanta got listed, and they are now expanding into higher kV. They are still bulk of their transformer are still low kV, but they have acquired a Chinese company where they are now entering into higher kV. So let's talk about Trill first. So Trill actually काफी फेम्ड कंपनी है, एंड लोग काफी बात करते हैं इस कंपनी की, क्योंकि इट हैज गिवन लाइक मल्टी बैगर काइंड ऑफ रिटर्न. और अभी फिर से काफी ये न्यूज में आया है, क्योंकि their last quarter was not so good due to one-off reasons, and because of that, share crashed more than, if I'm not wrong, more than 60% from its high levels. Like high levels were around 600. Today trades at around, I think, 300 or 280 rupees. Not telling you about the price, but this is one of the most talked about company in the sector. This is also one of the most marquee companies in the sector because it is largely into higher kV. And as we discussed previously, higher kV is a moated business. There are very limited suppliers. Listed space में तो ये एक ही था 6 महीने पहले तक. अब अटलांटा और ये है, but अभी भी there are very few players, and bulk of the growth is actually coming from bulk of the growth is actually coming from higher kV. So जब suppliers कम हो, demand ज्यादा हो, तो that is the perfect recipe. I think Vidul is raising a hand. I would request him to post his questions on the Q&A, because as of now, I think we'll just go with the flow here. Happy to take questions in the end, Vidul. I think moving on to again our to our presentation. Uh, Trill basically is currently having a capacity of 40,000 MVA. Transformer or substation capacities are calculated in MVAs. And it is doing currently a capacity expansion of 35,000 more, which is in high voltage as well as medium voltage. So after this capacity expansion, which goes live next year, they will be the highest company which has the highest kV or MVA in higher kV transformers. So even 1 year from now, even Atlanta is doing some capex. Even then also, this company will have the highest amount of MVA in higher kV transformers. So the moat continues for this company. Let me talk about something which is not present in this presentation is their recent results. So recent results में हुआ क्या, that it was a fairly growing company at 40%, 50% kind of growth rate. Suddenly, what happened is this quarter reported they reported actually zero growth rate, 0% YOY growth, which is always not liked in high P stocks. This was earlier trading at 60 70 times price to earnings on TTM basis. एकदम से एक क्वार्टर आता है जब ग्रोथ गायब हो जाती है, तो people punish the stock, and there is obviously a certain amount of guys who are short term traders, or who don't like the result, who sell their stock. And along with bad results, एक और न्यूज आई थी इस कंपनी में कि वर्ल्ड बैंक ने इनके प्रोडक्ट को बैन कर दिया है. इन्होंने 2022 में कुछ नाइजीरिया में ट्रांसफॉर्मर्स एक्सपोर्ट करे थे. वो वर्ल्ड बैंक का प्रोजेक्ट था, और उन ट्रांसफॉर्मर्स में कुछ वर्ल्ड बैंक ने बोला कि कुछ प्रॉब्लम थी, एंड दे हैड अ बैक एंड फोर्थ विद द कंपनी. Company actually rectified the problems in back in 2022, and World Bank paid everything in full to Trill. ये ट्रांजैक्शन क्लोज हो चुका था 3 साल पहले. बट उसके बाद 3 साल बाद वर्ल्ड बैंक ने इनको बैन किया. तो बिकॉज ऑफ बोथ दीज न्यूज द स्टॉक फेल 50% ऑलमोस्ट, मोर देन दैट. एंड जब मैनेजमेंट आया एंड उन्होंने क्लैरिफाई किया, तो दे वर एबल टू एक्चुअली गिव गुड रीजंस कि ये ग्रोथ एकदम से क्यों रुकी. सो इनके मेनली दो ऑर्डर्स थे जो they got stuck. One was with PGCIL. There was a last I think 150 crore or 130 करोड़ का एक ऑर्डर था जो कस्टम्स ने रोक लिया था ड्यू टू सम चेंजेस इन HSN codes. PGCIL had to intervene with customs and import that order. It was a large reactor order. Uh, and there was another order which was pushed due to heavy rains, and ड्यू टू हैवी रेंज उसकी डिलीवरी नहीं हो पाई. तो टोटल करीब 200 करोड़ के ऑर्डर्स थे जो कि ये 2Q में रिपोर्ट करते अगर ये वन ऑफ इवेंट्स नहीं आते तो. अब ये 200 करोड़ एक्चुअली 3Q में आएंगे. सो 3Q में एक जो नॉर्मल ग्रोथ हो रही थी वो भी आएगी, एंड 3Q में जो ये ऑर्डर वन ऑफ इनके हट गए Q2 से वो Q3 में आएंगे. सो Q3 मार्केट्स बहुत अच्छे से देखेगा जो जो इन्होंने मैनेजमेंट ने बोला इन्वेस्टर्स को. I think some investors have got convinced, and that is why yesterday, the share price was reacting to this. And I think this is what has happened with Trill. But apart from that, fundamentally speaking, margins, if you look at the company in the last 3 years since the T&D wave has happened, margins have re-rated from sub 10% to currently 16-18%. And companies actually doing backward integration, which is also written here, that companies entering into bushings, reactors, CRGO, tank manufacturing, and CTC, which is winding. And they are actually, yes, they have given a target of 3,500 crore revenue. I think that target is reduced. They recently reduced that target, but they have still FY27 or FY28 का target intact है, which they had given publicly. That is still intact. So I think this is largely about Trill. This is like one of the most marquee companies out there in the transformer space. It is doing backward integration. Due to this backward integration, their margins will go up by 3%. Currently at 15, 16, 17%, will touch 20%. And will be, superb for the company. Working capital is also 90 days, which is kind of standard. I would say 90 days is a good working capital days. I think we've talked enough about Trill, so we'll actually move on to the next company, which is again, trying to become the next Trill. So this company is actually Atlanta Electricals. Very interestingly, इस company का IPO बहुत recent आया है, and some marquee investors were also invested in this company in the anchor round. But just talking about the product portfolio, company actually makes, and you have the product portfolio on the screen as well. Company makes distribution transformers right from starting from 1 kV, below 1 kV, to power transformers start, up to 765 kVs. And they, in the con call, they actually said that, the 765 से ऊपर भी, which is 1100 kV, they will be able to manufacture. इसमें एक स्पेशल सिचुएशन हुआ है कंपनी में. सो कंपनी ट्रेडिशनली वाज एक्चुअली नॉट was not a very high kV ट्रांसफार्मर मैन्युफैक्चरिंग, बट इनको लास्ट ईयर बहुत यूनिक अपॉर्चुनिटी मिली. चाइना की एक कंपनी थी इंडिया में जो हायर केवी ट्रांसफार्मर्स बनाती थी, एंड इट वाज अप्रूव्ड इन PGCIL. बट ड्यू टू रेगुलेटरी चेंजेस, गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया की वजह से वो द फैक्ट्री गॉट डिफंक्ट, एंड इन्होंने वो डिफंक्ट फैक्ट्री खरीदी है. तो उस फैक्ट्री को खरीदने की वजह से दे आर नाउ एबल टू एक्चुअली एंटर इनटू हायर केवी ट्रांसफार्मर्स. So this was not a traditionally a higher kV company, but now they have become a higher kV transformer manufacturing company with this Chinese acquisition. And all the PGCIL approvals related to this acquisition are still not with them. So in the next 3 to 6 months is what they have said in the con calls, that in the next 3 to 6 months they will get those approvals, and they will again start supplying higher kV transformers to PGCIL and all the private clients and public clients. So again, this is a very good case study. आप देखिए ये कंपनी लिस्टेड है. ट्रिल इससे ज्यादा स्पेसिफिकेशन वाइज या कंपनी वाइज इट इज बेटर प्लेस्ड than Atlanta. But Atlanta ka, if you look at valuation, you will feel it is currently the most highly valued, transformer company, trading at I think 50-60 times of trailing 12-month profits. uh, versus Trill, which was actually down to 28 times, and it's now again with the move of yesterday, it has come up again to I think 34, 35 times. So versus Trill, it is still very significantly valued, and it is valued for a reason because it will be supplying higher kV transformers, and inki facility will actually go live in the next 6 months to 12 months. Again on similar to Trill, इनका भी export business is not a very large portion. Exports में I think there is only one company which is uh, which has cracked it, which is Shilchar. We'll discuss that company. But apart from Shilchar, only Trill is trying to make very heavy inroads. And Trill is the only company which is also trying to manufacture HVDC related transformers, which is also a very high growth area for Trill. So again, Atlanta, a very good company, but I would still say, slightly lesser than Trill. But still, since they are in higher KV, they will enjoy, the growth and stability which higher KV companies normally will get versus lower KV companies. इनका business commoditized नहीं होगा. They will always be a niche player and will be valued in the public markets in that way. So I think moving on to our next company, which is called Shilchar. Again, a big fan of this company. This is the only company which has been able to meaningfully crack export markets. Export currently contributes 43% of their revenue. And due to a very high level of export, you look at their EBITDA margins, it is, north of 25-30%, which is very good. Uh, Working capital is a slight challenge here versus Trill. Their working capital is slightly more stretched, but I think the margins make up for the higher working capital. So that should not be an issue with this company. The clients which they supply are really marquee clients in the US, and hence it should really not be an issue. Apart from that, they also make IDT transformers. I think Trill is also making IDT transformers, and Danish is a famous company because उसका IPO ही इस basis पे आया था कि IDT transformer making company है. But like I said in the beginning of this presentation, IDT transformer has become commodity. And you'll find a lot of companies making IDT transformers. Again, इसका भी capacity expansion हो रहा है. Shilchar actually was one of the first companies to do capex back in 22-23, and they have utilized that capex within 1 or 2 years, and now they are doing another capex, which is almost doubling the capacity now. Similar with, I think, Trill, which is going from 40 to 75, that is also doubling. I think अटलांटा का काफी अभी 63,000 MVA में से काफी portion has yet to start, which is the higher KV Chinese company. So apart from that 65, the incremental is what they have said is only 5. So in terms of capex, I think both Trail and Silchar is almost doubling their capacities. I think moving on to the next company, Voltamp Transformers, it's a very conservative management. Although fundamentally, its business model is slightly different because they don't actually work with a lot of PSU companies. They actually work with industrial clients. So suppose Reliance कोई एक बहुत बड़ा मॉल खोल रहा है, या they are working on a very big factory in uh, uh, which is a solar factory or a cell factory. So they will need power and they will need transformers, right? Those transformers would mainly be distribution one. बट इवन प्राइवेट क्लाइंट्स के जो केपेक्स होते हैं उनमें ट्रांसफॉर्मर्स का रिक्वायरमेंट होता है, और वो ट्रांसफॉर्मर्स मेनली वोल्टैम्प इज एबल टू you know Voltam is able to supply. So most of the client base for Voltam is actually not government, while for others it is government or discoms or EPC companies. For this guy, it's mainly industrial, and hence you will see lowest debtor days for this guy. Although their inventory days are very high and their payable days are very low, and because of which their overall working capital is actually higher, but their payable days, their debtor days are the lowest in the industry. They are a slightly conservative management. Almost एक दो साल से they have been fully utilizing, but capex इनका अभी आया नहीं है. Capex is expected to come in the next 1 or 2 years again. और capacity expansion भी they are not doubling. They are increasing by hardly 40%, 40 to 50%. So इसलिए मैं बोलता हूँ ये थोड़ा सा conservative management है. But I think slow and steady wala management hai, and in bad times they have seen what has happened in the industry, and hence they are probably conservative. Very marquee investor, which is Nalanda Capital, is invested in this company. But again, I would say the capacity expansion plan is not that great. Also, the product profile is also not that great. I think moving on to our next company, which is called Bharat Bijli. This is a fairly commodity company. It's already visible in their valuation as well as margins. Again, ये smaller kV transformers ही बनाते हैं. A very small portion will be 220, and 220 is also a smaller kV. They are actually doing a decent capacity expansion, almost doubling, like Trill and Shilchar. They are doubling their capacities as well. Exports for everyone apart from Shilchar is in low single digits. I think Trill is trying to break through that and working very hard on getting more and more exports. But currently, even they are going through the approval cycle and still take them 2 years minimum to crack that. But Shilchar के बाद कोई कंपनी होगी शायद जो एक्सपोर्ट क्रैक कर पाएगी. I feel it will be Trill. But for now, there's not much of revenue from them for them also. Bharat Bijli is a fairly, as I told you, it's a fairly okay kind of company, available at okay kind of valuations. Working capital is okay, slightly on a higher side. Margins are fine. Margins are actually lower versus rest of the industry. So I think these were the five main companies which we wanted to cover in the sector. And whatever I have spoken will give you clues to analyze more companies. There are very small cap companies like Star Delta. Uh, I think there are a couple of more companies, at least 4 or 5 more companies, which are very small, micro cap, small cap kind of companies. But whatever I have discussed, जो भी हमने आज बात करी है, जो भी discussion करा है, उससे आपको idea लग जाएगा how to look at transformer companies. Uh, we have ranked these five companies basis on our five parameters which we discussed earlier, right? Based on the transformer type, export and domestic share, capacity expansion plans, margins, and working capital. So if you see in all these five companies, Trill actually ranks, probably the best, one being the best ranking and three being the worst ranking. Trill का product profile is the best in the industry, followed by Atlanta. Exports में Shilchar is the best, followed by Trill. Capacity expansion, again, I think everyone is doing this, but I think Trill has the best capacity expansion because the bulk of its capacity expansion is in higher kV. Margins, you will see Shilchar being the best, and then everyone else is kind of similar versus, and just Bharat Bijli has the lowest margins. And working capital, again, working capital is the best for Trill and Atlanta. Actually, Atlanta outscores here, even Trill, by few 10 20 days. But that's almost same. And Shilchar has a slightly higher working capital, but they are also having best in class margins. Uh, and hence, this is a table where you can rank these companies and even some other companies which I have told you in the order of excellence or in the order comparing them with peers. So इसको आपको एक idea लग जाएगा देख के कि यार कौन सी कंपनी बेटर है, fundamentally better. I am not talking about share prices because markets are sentiment driven. And sometimes even the best of the companies like Trill, I was saying, they have corrected 60-70%, right? So sometimes even best of the companies in short term volatility or sentiments, negative sentiments or results performance, they will get corrected. And hence, this is not an indicator of a buy, sell, hold rating. And I'll again give you this disclaimer that this is a education platform. We are actually not responsible for any profits or losses which you make, and please consult your financial advisor before making any investment decisions based on this presentation. But अगर आप fundamentally मुझसे बात करोगे तो fundamentally these are this is the situation of these five companies, and I would really like if you can add few more companies here on your own and give them a rank as per your as per your criteria what we have discussed. So this is a brief ranking of these transformer companies. We have also done a very brief peer analysis, and I doubt you will see this kind of analysis for these companies anywhere else. So typically, what we have done is in पांचों companies को we have divided their market cap by MVA. So इनकी MVA की कैपेसिटी कितनी है, मतलब बेसिकली प्रोडक्शन करने की कैपेसिटी कितनी है ट्रांसफॉर्मर्स की वर्सेस देयर मार्केट कैप. सो बेसिकली किसी का अगर प्रोडक्शन करने का कैपेसिटी 50,000 MVA है और किसी का अगर 25,000 MVA है, तो उनकी मार्केट कैप क्या उसको ट्रूली रिफ्लेक्ट करती है, आज की भी कैपेसिटी और फ्यूचर की भी कैपेसिटी. मोस्ट ऑफ द प्लेयर्स विल गेट लाइव विद देयर कैपेसिटीज इन द नेक्स्ट 1 year, एंड हेंस फ्यूचर कैपेसिटी और आज की कैपेसिटी. और इसमें आप देखेंगे तो एटलांटा एंड ट्रिल एक्चुअली एंड इवन टू अ सर्टेन लेवल भारत बिजली हैव द least amount of market cap per MVA versus Voltamp and Shilchar, they have the highest amount of market cap per MVA. अब इसके कई रीजंस है. Let's try to understand it. सो पहली बात तो ये है कि शिलचार के केस में ये सेफली कह सकता हूं कि पर एमवीए उसकी मार्केट कैप इसलिए ज्यादा है क्योंकि पर एमवीए उसके मार्जिन भी ज्यादा है, राइट. जो भी वो ट्रांसफॉर्मर बेचता है वो पूरी इंडस्ट्री से 50% ज्यादा मार्जिन कमा रहा है. सो इसीलिए उनकी मार्केट कैप यहाँ पे ज्यादा दिख रही है. बट इफ यू लुक एट ट्रिल जो कि एक हायर केवी ट्रांसफॉर्मर बनाता है, उसकी मार्केट कैप कम होना इज रियली अ साइन विच यू कैन अंडरस्टैंड मे बी अ साइन ऑफ गुड वैल्यूएशन, लाइक फेवरेबल वैल्यूएशन. कि अगर उसका जो फ्यूचर का जो कैपेसिटी एक्सपेंशन अगर आप देखोगे और फ्यूचर में इफ दे कम टू 75,000 MVA and bulk of that portion will be higher KV and divide their MVA, I mean divide their market cap by the MVA, then per MVA market cap is actually on a lower side. Bharat Bijli, I think it deserves to be low because it's a fairly commodity company. So if in the future Trill's market cap by MVA is actually very near to Bharat Bijli, then you can understand either Bharat Bijli is overvalued or Trill is undervalued, both of the two. So I think if you compare these companies in terms of P, again Bharat Bijli, Voltamp, and Shilchar will trade at 20 to 25 P, while just a day back Trill was actually 28 P because of the near 17% rise in one day yesterday. It is now up to 34, which is still meaningfully below Atlanta. So what I mean to say is due to short-term sentiments, P's have derated for some of the best companies out there. This is again not a buy, sell, hold recommendation. This is an education platform, but I'll obviously, communicate that some best marquee companies are currently in this market. And this is just the transformer market. There are so many subsectors and so many companies out there. Due to short-term negative sentiment and results also, there has been this dislocation of price. I think someone is also asking about copper price rises, which has impacted margins of Trill and overall transformer sector. So I think if you look at their recent commentary, I think everything is almost come back to normal. इसमें होता क्या है कि जैसा हमने ट्रांसफॉर्मर का इकोसिस्टम जब समझा था, जब उसको डीकंस्ट्रक्ट करा था, तो उसमें जो एक कॉइल लगता है, जो कोर होता है, एंड जो वाइंडिंग वायर होता है, वो दोनों कॉपर का होता है. कॉपर इज द हाईएस्ट कंडक्टर ऑफ इलेक्ट्रिसिटी, राइट, एंड हेंस ट्रांसफॉर्मर्स यूज कॉपर अ लॉट. एंड इफ कॉपर प्राइसेस आर going through the roof, it takes them some time. There is some lag between their pricing getting increased and copper prices, their raw material pricing getting increased. So again यहाँ पे ये वाला mental model काम आएगा कि for someone who is commodity in nature, which is lower kV transformers, you will not be able to pass on the prices very easily, right? Because there are a lot of suppliers. आज इससे नहीं तो someone else will fulfill the customer's requirement, and you will not be able to pass on the copper prices to to your customers. Versus who is a higher kV guy, there are not many guys supplying that material or supplying that product, and hence higher kV guys will be able to bypass or will be able to pass on the copper prices, is what our understanding is on this subject matter. But I think copper prices going up is a normal phenomenon. This will pass away. Either this will for a short term, it will definitely eat up margins, but ultimately transformer companies will be able to pass on these prices. Higher kV के लिए easy होगा, smaller kV transformers के लिए difficult होगा. So this is why, modes of the business are useful. And this is why this kind of study was useful. I think just moving on to, uh, ट्रांसफॉर्मर कंपोनेंट्स ना हो, बिकॉज यहाँ कंपोनेंट्स की भी 4-5 कंपनीज अब लिस्ट हो चुकी हैं. एंड जो हमने शुरू में डिस्कस करा था, बुशिंग्स, कोर, सीआरजीओ कॉइल्स, कोर एंड वाइंडिंग वायर्स, उसको बनाने की 4-5 कंपनीज अब लिस्ट हो चुकी हैं. So we will take up that, and then we will conclude what's the outlook on the transformer sector. And I'll try to keep it very short. I think we have explained enough on the theme of transformers. So here also, if a component supplier actually supplies to higher kV transformers exclusively, he's also a moated guy. So that is why we look at the usage in transformer, कि वो जो product बेच रहा है वो transformer में use कहाँ हो रहा है. So agar if you are able to understand that, then you will be able to understand that who is slightly moated versus others. Again, यहाँ पे भी export versus domestic plays similar how it has played with Shilchar. Again, यहाँ पे भी is capacity expansion. Someone is doing capacity expansion which is coming online very quickly versus someone who's not doing is a key metric. Working capital margins are always one of the key matrices to track, these capital goods companies. Uh, so again, there are 4 companies here. One is Vilas Transcore. The other one is JB Lamination. Then we have a recently listed company called Mangal Electricals. And lastly, we have a company called Yesh High Voltage. So these 4 companies broadly are transformer component manufacturers. And let's first talk about Vilas Transcore. So as the name suggests, it actually supplies the core of transformers. They supply the CRGO laminated cores, and on that core, the transformer company will apply a winding wire. And वो winding wire और core को use करके ही आप step up और step down कर पाओगे. There is no other way to step up, step down the electricity, and hence they supply this product to the transformer companies. They are also into radiators and nano crystalline cores. So आजकल कुछ नई तरह की cores आ गई है. Some new tech is happening, which is called nano crystalline. It's a slightly more niche kind of tech, and hence I believe this is a slightly higher margin and moated business. The other guy who's the listed guy, they are not into this product. So clearly, I think this company is a slightly better placed company with the versus JB Laminations. They are doing a 3x capacity expansion, which is a great deal, right? Transformer companies को हमने देखा था तो maximum 2x हो रहा था, but यहाँ पे 3x capacity expansion हो रहा है. So definitely capacity expansion is slightly higher versus the transformer company. So definitely ये picks and shovels play है to the transformer growth, क्योंकि ultimately इनका product वहां जाता है. एंड जब ट्रांसफॉर्मर कंपनी पूरे देश में 250 कंपनीज 250 कंपनीज आर डूइंग केपेक्स, दे विल आस्क फॉर सीआरजीओ कॉइल्स फ्रॉम विलास ट्रांसकोर, एंड हेंस दे आर डूइंग a 3x capacity expansion. So in that term, it is much superior than some of the listed transformer companies. Valuation is also very similar. I think trades at around 20, 25 times, 23 times. Margins similarly 13%, not bad. Comes down to ROC ultimately. Recently there was a supply crunch in CRGO, which was also asked by someone in the webinar. So this is a short-term supply crunch which has happened. I think most of it is past us. Due to this, margins for Vilas as well as JB Lamination were impacted in the last quarter, and which was actually the primary reason for Trill as well. Margins, and hence you saw a certain downtrend in the entire sector. PEs have almost come down by 30-40% for the entire sector, not just the leaders of the sector. So in के लिए भी I think they were also trading at 40 times and now trade at 25 times. So that has corrected for them as well. Working capital is not a big deal. It is slightly on a higher side, but it is manageable. Uh, they are actually further expanding into conductor wiring wires, and this is called CTC. A lot of companies are actually expanding into CTC, which is, I don't think it's a special product. So in this webinar, we'll actually not be covering EPC companies. We'll be covering only transformer uh, product companies, as well as cable companies, as well as some HVDC related companies. Uh, EPC companies like Oriana or Rajesh Power will actually be covered next week, because the sector has over 50-60 companies who are listed, and maybe more than that in the unlisted space. It is not possible to cover everything in one go. And hence, I'll request you to join back in the next webinar where we will be actually discussing about EPC companies. Uh, so moving back on Vilas, I think that this is pretty much all from my side on Vilas. It's a good company, available at decent valuation. Capacity expansion is definitely very favorable. Now, why I said that this is better than JB Lamination. So JB Lamination is again a CRGO supplier to these transformer companies. JB Lamination is already is also doing capacity expansion, but इनका capacity 3x नहीं हो रहा है. इनका capacity is rising by 60-70%. They are coming close to around 20,000 from close to around 12,000. So इनके बिजनेस में और विलास के बिजनेस में डिफरेंस इस क्वार्टर में समझ में आया. If you look at their EBITDA margins, I think they were negative. Their bottom line or EBITDA margin was negative, versus Vilas का कम हुआ, but they were still doing fine. इस पूरे बिजनेस में actually the moat is on sourcing CRGO coils from China. If someone's sourcing is not great, he will get hit on EBITDA margins. Versus, if someone's sourcing is superb and he's really at it, uh, it actually differentiates the two companies. And the last quarter was the best quarter to differentiate between two companies, and that is why I said that JB Lamination slightly inferior, or Vilas Transcor is slightly a better company versus both of them, because Vilas was able to weather the storm a slightly better way. Also, one more thing which I don't like about this company is they are actually entering into EPC contracts. So EPC is what, not their main product. Their main product is CRGO. So आप CRGO के around अपना capacity expansion करो. Like Vilas is doing in radiators and some other products which are used in transformers. They are actually entering into T&D EPC company, EPC order book. They have now got around 300 crore kind of order book in the EPC business, which is actually diversifying away into a non-core area. So इस company के साथ शायद क्या हो रहा है? They haven't been very successful in the CRGO wala business, and hence they are now expanding into some other unrelated business to show top line, bottom line growth to their shareholders. So this is very important to differentiate two companies in the same sector. One company who is doing 3x capacity expansion, which is Vilas, and this company who is doing like not a very high amount of capacity expansion, but is actually going away and diversifying its business into non-core areas. And hence, I feel this is also reflected in the valuation of both the companies, where Vilas gets a slightly better PE multiple versus JB Laminations. I think the third company again in the similar space is Mangal Electric. This is the same company by the same promoters of Dynamic Cables, which is also a listed company, and we'll come to that company in the cable discussion. So I think they run this company where they also do CRGO coils, laminations, but there are some more products, which is circuit breakers, amorphous cores. These are some unique kind of cores, wound cores, and basically ये सब lamination और core के around ही ये सब अलग अलग तरह के product हैं. But एक एक चीज और है इनके साथ, they are also manufacturing transformers itself, lower kV transformer like single phase 5 kV, 10 kV, 10 MVA transformers, and hence it again puts me in the bucket of commodity product. So CRGO plus commodity product, ये company उस sector में है. And again, if you look, valuations are not that great because the business is not that great. They, with the IPO money, they are expanding their CRGO capacity by 50% around, and transformer capacity by 60-70%. They are seeing good business. Their working capital is actually better than both Vilas and JB. I think partly it is due to the transformer part of the business, because CRGO part of the business is slightly higher working capital. But transformer part की वजह से शायद इनका working capital थोड़ा कम है. Margins are kind of industry standard. So again, a mediocre kind of company, available at mediocre valuations. Moving on to, one of the best companies in the component space, transformer component space. This company is called Yesh High Voltage. So Yesh High Voltage actually bushings बनाता है. ये वही बुशिंग्स है जो ट्रांसफार्मर में एक सर्कल शेप में ऊपर हमने बहुत शुरू में डिस्कस करी थी. और मेजरली ये बुशिंग्स हायर केवी ट्रांसफार्मर्स में ही लगती है, क्योंकि लोअर बुशिंग का काम होता है हाई वोल्टेज को इंसुलेट करना. तो लोअर वोल्टेज के ट्रांसफार्मर्स में बुशिंग की रिक्वायरमेंट ही नहीं है. ये प्रोडक्ट ही हायर वोल्टेज केवी ट्रांसफार्मर्स में लगता है. And the most interesting part for this company is actually what they have said in the con call. If you go to screen, look at their con call summary, they are actually saying कि वर्ल्ड में सिर्फ 12-13 लोग हैं जो बुशिंग्स बनाते हैं, और वर्ल्ड का हम 1% मार्केट शेयर भी नहीं है. एंड वी वुड लाइक टू टेक वर्ल्ड्स 5 to 6% मार्केट शेयर एटलीस्ट इन द नेक्स्ट 5 years और सो. इंडिया में कुछ लोग हैं जैसे जी सीजी पावर, सॉरी, एंड दीज लाइक, जो ये बिग बिग 3 या बिग 4 कंपनीज हैं, जी वर्नोवा, सीजी पावर, हिटाची एंड सीमेंस. They are internationally the one of the best Power T&D companies. They also have business apart from Power T&D. But again, coming back to my point, bushing बनाने वाले लोग नहीं हैं, and bushing higher kV transformers में लगते हैं, इसलिए they have a moated business. There are not many suppliers. There is a lot of demand in higher kV transformers, and they are supplying components of higher kV transformers. Again, इनके दो तरह के products हैं, OIP and RIP bushings. You have the full form here. They are also doing a very large capex. I think currently the number is going up to 15,000 from 9,000. I think I'll check this number again, but I think the bulk of their capex is in the RIP bushing, which is a slightly higher yielding product versus OIP. So historically they were more in OIP, but now they are entering into more of RIP. And RIP is an export product. RIP is almost having a 2x kind of margins versus OIP. And bulk of the capex which they are doing is actually in RIP. And hence, if you understand both these products, you will be able to understand कि ये बहुत smartly capex high yielding product में कर रहे हैं. They will not do capex in fairly commodity, or commodity is not the right word, but a low yielding product. So their margins actually will go up. Plus, there is no competition. Let's say like other companies, Vilas, Mangal, and JB, they are marred with competition. तो वो 3 कॉम्पिट तो कर ही रहे हैं, बाकी उसके अलावा अनलिस्टेड भी बहुत लोग हैं. वर्सेस you speak to someone in the industry, he will tell you bushings के ज्यादा लोग नहीं है. So इसलिए ट्रिल जो है वो खुद की बुशिंग खुद बनाने की बात कर रहा है. तो कुछ लोगों ने इनसे पूछा कि isn't this a negative that transformer companies are making bushing themselves? So they said ki, very few people and very small amount of transformer companies will be able to do bushings by themselves, because this is a fairly complex product to make. And hence, market is wide open. Despite Trill being, doing backward integration, they have a lot of other players to cater to. And, if you look at their margins, their working capital, you will understand how moated this business is, because they are actually doing a 20% kind of margin, which is much higher versus JB, Vilas, and Mangal. Plus, they also have a 45-day working capital cycle, which is almost half to what the other guys are doing. So, in the component space, transformer component space, this is the most moated company out there, as per our understanding. Again, we have ranked these companies basis on the 5 matrices which we earlier discussed based on usage in transformers, export versus import, capacity expansion, margins, and working capital. And you will clearly see a winner here because you look at the numbers, working capital margins, you look at their conference call, you look at the entire space, look at the product, which their product is going into higher KV, you'll automatically understand that this ranking makes sense. Um, and hence, this is their basic fundamentals. You will clearly see Yesh high voltage at almost, more than double price to earnings ratio, which is rightly so. And unfortunately, markets are very, very efficient, and markets know everything which we are discussing. So, a good company always commands a higher price. Similarly, someone gave me an example कि आप जिस शहर में रहते हो उसमें जो प्राइम लैंड है उसका रियल एस्टेट का प्राइस सबसे ज्यादा ही होगा ना. उसी तरह से इवन इन लिस्टेड स्पेस जो प्राइम नीश काम है उसका वैल्यूएशन is always on a higher side. But what I have seen is, even at higher valuation, if growth remains intact, there is a fair amount of runway in terms of share price. But again, a disclaimer: this is not a buy, sell, hold recommendation. We are not into that. This is an education platform, and we are not responsible for any profits or losses which you may make because of your understanding in this presentation. Please consult your financial advisor. So making it again out of the way. So we will actually move on to the final part in the transformer space, and then we will actually start cables. And then we have HVDC also. So I'll try to quickly wrap it up because we have almost, it looks like we'll overshoot our time. So in 2Q specifically, these are some of the commentaries or outlook which these companies have given. CRGO जो प्राइजेस हैं वो इंक्रीज हो गई थी, कॉपर की प्राइसेस इंक्रीज हो गई थी, इसकी वजह से इनके मार्जिन्स इम्पैक्ट हुए थे. बट इन द रीसेंट कमेंट्री व्हाट वी हैव हर्ड इज prices have cooled down, it has come back to normal. Even transformer prices had adjusted to normal levels. Everyone is doing capacity expansion. The order pipeline for the large players is actually ऑलमोस्ट 20,000 करोड़, जो हम पहले बात भी कर रहे थे टैम एनालिसिस में. तो उतनी टैम या उतने टैम के इनके पास ऑर्डर्स भी हैं, रफली रफली दैट नंबर. यूटिलिटीज की डिमांड बहुत ज्यादा है, बट अगेन प्राइवेट सेक्टर इज ऑल्सो डिमांडिंग अ लॉट ऑफ ट्रांसफॉर्मर्स एंड इक्विपमेंट्स. मार्जिन प्रेशर अभी तक नहीं दिख रहा है इस इंडस्ट्री में, ऑल्दो लास्ट क्वार्टर में था, बट गोइंग फ्रॉम हियर लेट्स से 1 year 2 year आउट, बट मार्जिन इंक्रीज भी नहीं होंगे. अपार्ट फ्रॉम ट्रिल हु इज डूइंग बैकवर्ड इंटीग्रेशन, ज्यादा लोगों के मार्जिन इंक्रीज होने की भी एक्सपेक्टेशन नहीं है. सो दिस इज फेयरली लाइक अ स्टेडी स्टेट काइंड ऑफ थिंग. जब तक डिमांड रहती है तब तक मार्जिन रहेंगे. जिस दिन सप्लाई ज्यादा आ गई लोअर केवी में, उस दिन मार्जिन कम होंगे. और सेकंड, जिस दिन डिमांड कम हो गई उस दिन भी मार्जिन कम होंगे. तो डिमांड तो आई डोंट थिंक इज अ प्रॉब्लम राइट नाउ. ओवर सप्लाई कैन बी अ प्रॉब्लम इन लोअर केवी ट्रांसफॉर्मर्स, जिसकी वजह से लोअर केवी वालों के मार्जिन आपको कम मिल सकते हैं, मे बी 1 year 2 year फ्रॉम नाउ. Again, these are our top three companies which are fundamentally the strongest companies in the entire set of, I think, 9-10 companies which we have discussed. I think you can fairly understand with my bullishness towards few companies. Atlanta, Trill, and Yesh High Voltage are fundamentally, the strongest company. And again, this is I'm speaking fundamentally. Even fundamentally strong companies can give very bad returns. So hence, a disclaimer that this is not a buy recommendation at all. I think with this we have closed down on our discussion. I'm happy to take any questions on the Q&A chatbot. But we'll move to wire and cables now. If you have any questions, happy to answer them towards the end, but happy to post it now. So coming on the wires and cables. So अभी टीएनडी में सबसे ज्यादा रिक्वायरमेंट ट्रांसफार्मर के बाद वायर एंड केबल की होती है, क्योंकि यू अंडरस्टैंड राइट, from the area where generation happens to final delivery, it's all connected through wires, right? And step up step down happens in transformers. So these are the two key areas or industries which have got a certain inflection because of governments. So no, we'll not be able to share you our holdings. Uh, I'm sorry, this is not a session to discuss our holdings. This is a session to just discuss our knowledge. Uh, Star Delta is a fairly small company. It's a fairly commodity company. They are doing some capex, as I understand, but bulk of the capex is again in lower kV transformers. So I would say it is a commodity company available at a okayish price. I think wires and cables पे आगे बढ़ना चाहिए हमें, and then we have to discuss HVDC, which is also a very interesting new aspect where people are entering, and the uh, uh, you know growth area in the sector. So specifically talking about wires and cables, again ये सेक्टर में दो मेन चीजें हैं. वायर जो कि एक सिंगल कोर का एक वायर होता है, एंड देन देयर आर केबल्स व्हिच हैव मल्टीपल लेवल्स ऑफ कोर्स. द एंटायर सेक्टर, एंड देन वी हैव कंडक्टर्स आल्सो. कंडक्टर करके भी कुछ होता है जो कि नॉर्मली हम देखते नहीं है, क्योंकि हमारी रोज की लाइफ में वी ओनली डील विद इंसुलेटेड वायर्स. बट देयर इज समथिंग कॉल्ड कंडक्टर विच इज अ बेयर मेटल. एल्यूमिनियम के कंडक्टर्स होते हैं, बेयर मेटल होते हैं, और डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन में तो यूज ही नहीं होते हैं. हमको जो दिखता है वो डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन है. ट्रांसमिशन में वो यूज होते हैं. जो मल्टी स्टोरी बिल्डिंग्स होती हैं, उनमें ट्रांसमिशन के जो वायर्स होते हैं वो काफी कंडक्टर्स होते हैं. तो आई थिंक अगेन वायर्स में दो सेक्टर्स हैं. कुछ लोग हैं जो बिल्डिंग प्रोडक्ट्स या हाउसिंग वायर्स बना रहे हैं, जैसे पॉलीकैब इज अ वेरी फेमस कंपनी, हेवल्स इज अ वेरी फेमस कंपनी, बट दे आर फेमस बिकॉज दे मेक हाउसिंग केबल्स और वायर्स. They do not make, or they bulk of their business actually is a B2C business. They are not into B2B that much, but they are into Power T&D B2B. But as a percentage of total business, it is not a very large portion. Again, there are different types of cables based on, or wires based on their work. So you can see this on the presentation. This is not really of relevance or to our discussion, so I'll quickly skip this. uh, this is very much of relevance. So similar to transformer, यहाँ पे भी आप देखोगे कि जो एक्स्ट्रा हाई वोल्टेज और हाई वोल्टेज के केबल्स बना रहा है वो बहुत नीश है, और उसके सप्लायर्स बहुत लिमिटेड है. एंड यहाँ पे भी जो लो वोल्टेज और मीडियम वोल्टेज के केबल्स बना रहा है, वहां पे सप्लायर्स बहुत हैं, एंड इट्स अ फेयरली कमोडिटी प्रोडक्ट. नाउ इसमें थोड़ा वोल्टेज में ट्रांसफार्मर से अगर कंपेयर करेंगे तो फ्रॉम ऑल वेरी लो केवी एक हाई वोल्टेज चालू हो जाता है, वर्सेस ट्रांसफार्मर को हम 220 केवी तक हाई वोल्टेज नहीं बोलते. यहाँ पे हम 33 केवी के ऊपर ही हाई वोल्टेज बोलने लग जाते हैं. तो एक थोड़ा सा ये फर्क है ट्रांसफार्मर के साथ इन द केबल स्पेस. So I think this is broadly where you will, or probably we will, make our investment thesis on some of the companies. We will look at the products of those companies, and we have a broader understanding that whoever is making a high voltage or extra high voltage products, they are definitely very niche versus some of the other players. Again, a very brief comparison between cable conductor. As I told you, conductors are bare aluminium वायर्स. उनमें बेयर मेटल होता है और उसके ऊपर कोई इंसुलेशन भी नहीं होता है. प्रैक्टिकली इफ यू टच इट यू विल गेट करंट, बट इन अ power cable it is insulated, and hence you will not get current. It is mostly insulated by PVC or by XLPE. And XLPE actually is manufactured by one of the listed companies called DDAV Plastics. If you have heard, that company is actually into XLPE. It's one of the largest companies who manufacture XLPE. And whenever there is a tailwind, in the sector, um, DDAV Plastics will get orders from these wire players because he will supply XLPE. But coming back to our discussion, conductors versus power cables. Conductors are bare metals with no insulation. Power cables have insulation of XLP or PVC. Cables are mainly low kV, medium, high, extra high. Conductors are mainly extra high voltage or high voltage. Cables are used both in transmission distributions. Conductors are used only in transmission sector. Again, moving on to the installation costs. Cables के केस में installation cost ज्यादा होती है क्योंकि cables are near to our homes, and to procure a tower or a land near to our home is fairly expensive versus आप कंडक्टर को बहुत ही दूर दराज के एरिया में लगा रहे हो क्योंकि वो एक ट्रांसमिशन लाइन है और हमारे शहरों में हमें ट्रांसमिशन लाइन नहीं दिखती है. इट्स फेयरली रिमोट एरिया. And hence, installation cost is actually lower in a conductor. For a conductor, maintenance is higher because it is not insulated, versus cable में maintenance ज़्यादा नहीं लगती है क्योंकि वो insulated होता है, वो protected होता है. I think you have the examples I've already given you. Some of the companies, now talking about companies, which is a more interesting part. Some of the companies which are in cables are Polycab, KEI, Universal Cable, RR Cable, and there are hundreds of companies actually. More than 10, 20 companies are already listed. In conductors, there are relatively fewer companies. One company is Apar, uh, which is similar to Trill of cable or conductor sector. It is the largest conductor manufacturer of the world. And there is also a very interesting special situation company called Diamond Power. This company is actually sort of a Adani company now. And what Adani is typically doing is giving him orders from his parent company, Adani Power. They win a lot of contracts. They directly give those conductor orders to Diamond Power. Uh, I think moving on in our presentation to the next slide, which is how do you want to analyze or how to analyze a wire company. ये हमने ट्रांसफार्मर में भी डिस्कस करा था कि एक ट्रांसफार्मर कंपनी को कैसे एनालाइज करें. तो similarly we have created 4 key points to analyze a wire company. A wire company can be analyzed looking at their volume growth. क्वार्टरली ये कंपनीज अपने रेवेन्यू ग्रोथ तो रिपोर्ट करते ही हैं, बट इनकी प्राइसिंग में ड्यू टू मेटल प्राइस चेंजेस इनकी प्राइसिंग में बहुत जल्दी चेंज आ जाता है, एंड हेंस इट इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट टू लुक एट देयर वॉल्यूम ग्रोथ. अ कंपनी विच हैज अ हायर वॉल्यूम ग्रोथ and a lower revenue growth is still fine because the revenue growth has happened because of the correction of the metal price, and hence sometimes market reacts due to revenue growth. वॉल्यूम ग्रोथ अगर अच्छी चल रही है तो कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं होनी चाहिए. सो इसीलिए एक वॉल्यूम ग्रोथ को देखना जरूरी है. अगेन सिमिलर टू ट्रांसफार्मर, यहाँ पे भी कोई एक्सपोर्ट करता है तो उसको बेटर माना जाता है क्योंकि एक्सपोर्ट की एक अप्रूवल साइकिल होती है. और एक्सपोर्ट आप कर रहे हो तो डेफिनेटली द क्वालिटी ऑफ द प्रोडक्ट इज मच बेटर versus someone who is entirely domestic. Similarly, moving on to the next, which is B2B and B2C. A lot of wire cable companies are B2B. We already know B2C. We already know like Polycab is a very famous company. Havels is a very famous company. These are all B2C companies. और क्योंकि ये B2C है, इनको वैल्यूएशन भी ज्यादा मिलता है वर्सेस B2B को वैल्यूएशन थोड़ा कम मिलता है. Again, every business actually comes down to working capital, margins, and cash flows. So we will also look at margins and working capital for all the players. I think moving on to our company specific discussions, which is the core of this presentation. Apar Industries is one of the again marquee companies in the sector. They are actually world's largest कंडक्टर मैन्युफैक्चरर, एंड सबसे अच्छी बात यह है कि इनके यूएस में एक्सपोर्ट्स हैं. Around 32% of their revenue is coming from exports, and I think within that 32%, more than 25 or maybe 30% will actually come from the US itself. So bulk of their exports are only in US, although they do export to some other countries, but US में conductor export करना is a big deal. None of the other Indian companies are able to export conductors per se, which is a slightly more technical product. They have recently done a 1300 crore capex, which is by far, obviously it's one of the largest capex. That some companies have market cap of 1300 crore. Their capex is 1300 crore, and bulk of this capex is actually going to cable sector. So they are actually now wanting to grow into cables because cables में margin ज्यादा होता है. In contrary to our belief, conductors, because they are bare metal, there is no insulation, वहां पे margin कम होता है, and cables में margin ज्यादा होता है. I think working capital wise भी they have the one of the best working capitals in the industry. And hence even at like 7-8% kind of EBITDA margin, if your working capital is good, you can make decent ROCs, ROEs, ROCs, and hence this company has a very lean working capital versus some of the other transformer companies which we are looking. They had a higher EBITDA margin, but they also had a higher working capital. So it is always an intersection between both of them, and this company has a lower margin but a much lower working capital also. Order book is not a problem for this company really. 7,000 crore of order book in conductor, and almost 24% of this order book is export. And cables may they have around 1,800 crore of. Their volume growth was slightly on a lower end in the last quarter. There are various reasons, but I think primarily the reason was slowness in domestic demand. There was a slowness due to rains, monsoon, but also due to some government execution on the Power T&D side, which I think every company has seen. And that is why, their volume growth, which was above 20-25% until last quarter, until last to last quarter, or until last year, is now down to around 16%. But they have actually guided for a better number for the year. So again, one of the most marquee companies in the sector. Second company, which is, I think, one of the most interesting companies in the cable space, is called Universal Cable. So, especially looking at their valuation and especially looking at their product profile. So, they are one of the only companies in India, and actually the first Indian company to supply EHV cables to Middle East. EHV cables, as I told you, someone who is in high voltage, extra high voltage, is a slightly moated business. And this company predominantly is, engaged in production of power cables, but they have a capacity dedicated to EHV, which is extra high voltage cables. Polycab, KEI, इन लोगों के पास भी extra high voltage का प्रोडक्शन कैपेसिटी नहीं है. और अगर कुछ लोगों के पास है, जैसे फिनोलेक्स के पास है, वो जेवी में है, and I think there's a company which has this, but the process of production of EHV is very interesting. So there are two processes of production. The first one is called VCV, which is vertical continuous vulcanization. एक vertical form में केबल बनती है. Second is CVV, which is continuous, which is horizontal actually. जो एक वर्टिकल के लिए आपको एक बहुत बड़ा टावर बनाना पड़ता है कंस्ट्रक्शन का, एंड इट्स अ फेयरली कॉम्प्लेक्स एंड हाई केपेक्स टावर. They have just landed themselves in a sweet spot, because no one was expecting demand in EHV cables 5 years back. And EHV केबल को बनाने के लिए 3-4 साल तो आपको वो वर्टिकल टावर बनाने में लग जाएगा. So they were a company which were not growing that well, not doing that well, but suddenly found themselves in the middle of a storm, where they are only one of the few companies producing EHV cables via VCV process. None of the other companies, I think, apart from Finolex, and Finolex का भी जो VCV वाला process है वो JV में है किसी के साथ, so they do not own it 100%, and JV partner is privately owned. Polycab, Havels, KEI Industries, none of them have this capability of producing EHV cables, and especially with VCV technology. And hence, that is why, I say that the product portfolio of this company is very unique, very moated. And they even have capability to supply EHV cables. HVDC cables. HVDC cables का इनके अलावा अभी कोई है नहीं. मतलब HVDC एक्चुअली ज्यादा ऑर्डर्स आए नहीं अभी इंडिया में. They will actually start coming from FY27 and onwards, when the bulk of the HVDC order book gets executed. So I think this was one of the key companies which we wanted to highlight in the cable sector. Uh, so I think I've been fairly clear. The order book is not a problem. They will start taking EHV orders more, and EHV order book will increase for them. Uh, the only issue with EHV order is higher amount of working capital required. So EHV orders mainly, EPC companies place करेंगी या गवर्नमेंट प्लेस करेगी. सो अगर पूरा केबल सेक्टर without EHV is trading or is having a working capital of 50 days, entering into the EHV sector, your working capital will be stretched to 90 to 100 days. ये एक problem है. But I think this will be more than compensated with the higher margins they make on the EHV cables or the HVDC cables. I think moving on to the next company, which is Dynamic Cable. Again, mediocre kind of company, producing cables and conductors both. They are entering into e-beam and solar cables, which is it's considered a very high growth area. If you attend the con calls of these listed companies, you will understand that e-beam cables, जो कि एक ऐसी unique cable है जो they are actually certifying their 50-year life versus a normal housing cable which has a 15-year life. 15 ई-बीम केबल्स की 50 इयर्स की लाइफ होती है. और इवन सोलर केबल्स की भी 25 इयर्स की लाइफ इनको करनी पड़ती है क्योंकि सोलर प्रोजेक्ट 25 इयर्स के लिए लगते हैं. सो दीज आर वेरी स्पेशल केबल्स एंड इसमें केपेक्स हो रहा है इनका अराउंड 45 करोड़. Exports constitute to around 10%, but their exports are not to the US. Their exports are mainly to ROW countries, which are African countries or MENA region में जो countries हैं वहां पे exports हो रहा है. So quality of the countries is not as high as US. Uh, Again, their margins are around industry average. Working capital is around 80 days. So fairly okay kind of company available at okay kind of valuation. RR Cable. RR Cable is actually more of a housing wire company, similar to Polycab, but they are also into cables. So you will see historically there, 73% of the revenue has come from wires versus the industry norm of 65%. They are now doing a very large capex on cable side. I think their capex will go live by next year. So this capex will actually be a big booster for them. But ये लोग भी EHV में नहीं है, which is a slightly more moated business or a slightly more unique business. Good part about this company is a very short working capital days and okay decent kind of margins. Volume growth for them was slightly low, around 12%. I think volume growth for Dynamic was pretty good, 20%. And I think in terms of results, Universal had one of the better results in the entire space. So again, RRP Cable is not really currently a beneficiary of the T&D spend because they are more into housing cables. Similar to Polycab, right? They are not a big beneficiary of Power T&D spend क्योंकि ये housing में ज्यादा है. And housing में इन लोग का brand बन चुका है. It's a fairly less working capital, higher ROC business, and also gets a higher valuation. So I think it makes sense for these guys to keep pushing at their B2C side of the business. But they are actually now doing capex to enter into B2B power T&D related business. Similar with Polycab, I think these players got slightly late or they were slightly busy making business in B2C, which is a slightly more lucrative business. But the tables turned post COVID. COVID के बाद B2B business वालों के बहुत order book आई and they were able to grow slightly faster. But anyways, markets are giving these companies a much higher valuation still versus companies who are actually in the T&D space. So again, T&D spends बढ़ने से Polycab और RR Cable को अभी तक ज्यादा फायदा नहीं हुआ है. They have now started doing capex, and look at the amount of capex they will do. 1200 to 1600 crore of capex per year for the next 5 years, which is great. I mean, around 8 से 10,000 crore का ये खर्चा करेंगे, 6 से 8,000 crore का, which is great. And for cables, the asset turns are also high, so the revenues can actually be as high as 5 to 10 times asset turns. They are also trying to shift towards the power T&D side. Volume growth was actually slightly better, 17 to 18%. Polycab is doing a much higher EBITDA margin versus the rest of the industry, 14 to 15% EBITDA margin, and working capital is superb, around 50 days. So that is why these companies get higher valuation. KEI Industries is actually a very interesting company. It's into EHV cables, LT cables and HT cables. LT means low tension and HT means high tension. बहुत ही शुरू में you had a graph where up to I think 33 kV or something HT आ जाता है. So they are also doing a capex in LT, HT, EHV. अभी most of the players who are not uh, or most of the players who are aware about, I think the entire industry is aware about it, but most of the players capex incrementally from here is happening in the power T&D side of things, which is LT, HV, EHV cables. ये cables housing cables में काम नहीं आएंगी, ये cables power T&D के spends में काम आएंगी, and hence most of the capex which is happening is in the T&D or is to cater to the increased T&D demand for all these companies, Polycab, KEI, and even RR Cables. Again, their volume growth was okayish, 15%. EBITDA is around 11%. Working capital is slightly high for this company because bulk of their cables go actually in the industrial part. So इसीलिए ये B2C और B2B में बीच में कहीं है, क्योंकि ये इंडस्ट्रियल क्लाइंट जो कोई गवर्नमेंट की बिल्डिंग बन रही है या कोई मॉल बन रहा है, तो ऐसे इंस्टीट्यूशनल क्लाइंट्स में जहां पे वर्किंग कैपिटल थोड़ी ज्यादा होती है, वहां पे इनका बल्क ऑफ द बिजनेस है. Again, this is a very short peer analysis. You will clearly see people who are slightly more moated. पहली चीज अपार इंडस्ट्रीज. People who are slightly more B2C like Polycab, RR Cable, have more valuations versus people who are B2B. Uh, and I think a very interesting company which should be looked at is Universal Cable because of their last quarter results and because of their announcement in EHV as well as HVDC cables. Currently, the valuation is kind of on a lower range, but let's see what the company reports in the coming quarters. Again, to give a disclaimer, this is not a recommendation. Please, consult your own financial advisor before making any kind of decisions. This is the outlook on the wire and cable sector. In H1, the volume growth was slightly on a lower side. Although I think most of the players are saying on a yearly basis, it will kind of come back to their normal 20% growth kind of range. बट पावर टीएनडी का बहुत बड़ा रब ऑफ इस सेक्टर पे होता है, और जब तक पावर टीएनडी में ग्रोथ आएगी तब तक जो पावर टीएनडी फेसिंग केबल कंपनीज है उनमें ग्रोथ आती रहेगी. A few companies have also called out that there is a new theme which is coming from this sector which is called conductor reconducting, which means कि पुरानी जहाँ पे कंडक्टर लाइंस लगी हुई हैं उनको आपको रिकंडक्ट करना है, मतलब उस पर दोबारा से वो कंडक्टर हटा के नया लगाना है, which is a big opportunity and specifically for a specific kind of conductor called HTLS. It is low tension, I think low tension lagging, low sag, high tension, low sag, HTLS. सो इस पर्टिकुलर कंडक्टर की डिमांड ज्यादा आएगी. अनफॉर्चुनेटली ज्यादा लोग हैं नहीं जो कंडक्टर्स बनाते हैं. अपार, डायमंड पावर एंड डायनेमिक केबल बनाता है बट नॉट मच. सो not many people actually are into conductor manufacturing, which is a lower margin business. Also, one constant theme which is coming out of the sector is government capex is growing faster than private capex. Wires cables में T&D में I think government का ही ज्यादा खर्चा होगा versus private capex is what these players are saying. Although I believe corporates are doing a good expenditure, especially on the data center side, but they will be probably doing more on the transmission or transformer side than the cable side of things. Although I think both will be required. ये एक बहुत बड़ी नेगेटिव थीसिस थी सेक्टर में लास्ट 1-2 साल पहले, जब अदानी एंड आदित्य बिरला एक्चुअली forayed into this. Most of the listed players actually corrected on the news of Adani and Aditya Birla. But these players are focusing more on higher, more on housing cables. So I think that is why these players will actually not impact Power T&D related people players. HVDC, none of the players are currently making. Universal Cable is the only company which has capability to make, but they have also not supplied yet क्योंकि orders ही नहीं आया अभी तक. All players are doing capex in HT, cable side. हाउसिंग वायर साइड केपेक्स ज्यादा सुनने में नहीं आया है क्योंकि हाउसिंग वायर में एक नॉर्मल सी ग्रोथ होगी वर्सेस पावर टी&डी में बहुत अच्छी ग्रोथ है. And also a strong demand is coming from Middle East and the US for these wire cable companies. I think we'll pick only two companies from the entire sector, which are fundamentally the strongest companies. We feel Apar is like Trill of this sector. It's the best in class company, and probably the best in class company world over, not just in India. Universal Cable seems to be a very interesting company because it has found its niche in EHV cables and HVDC cables. अभी EHV और HVDC की यहाँ से growth आएगी तो we feel that this company is kind of available at a valuation where this can be a very interesting company. But again, this is an education platform. These are the two fundamentally strong companies which we feel are there in the wires and cable sector. I think moving on to the last part of the presentation, and we'll try to take questions and answers after this. So happy to answer all questions in the end of this. HVDC, I think a fair bit was explained about this in the last presentation, but to kind of sum it up, and this also includes some MNCs because these MNCs are producing HVDC related products. इसलिए हमने इन MNCs को लिया है इसमें. So basically हो क्या रहा है कि bulk of the transmission happens in HVAC currently, which is alternative current. But अगर आप closely study करोगे तो आपको ये पता लगेगा कि above a certain kilometer, which is the chart on the right hand side, on the left hand side, sorry. Bulk, if you travel the electricity above a certain number of kilometers, it is more cost effective to make it HVDC versus AC. I think this kilometer is somewhere around 250 kilometer range. So 250 kilometer से ज्यादा अगर आपको transmission करना है, तो it will be more cost effective to have HVDC. This is one of the primary reasons. Second primary reason is the performance of HVDC is much greater than HVAC क्योंकि वो direct current जा रहा है. AC में alternative होता है तो current loss भी होता है and it is slow also. DC में it is fast. So, this is a new theme emerging, and a lot of countries, including China, US, Europe, have already done and have expensed out and have put up very large HVDC products. अगर आप HVDC को Google पे जाके देखोगे, and if you read some reports, you will find that China is actually the leader of HVDC in the world. But not just China, I think US is also one country which has, really taken it up on HVDC side. तो इसमें होता क्या है कि on the chart on the right hand side, generation के बाद आपके AC lines they get converted to DC lines, and the main bulk of the traveling happens in the DC lines, and then those DC lines actually convert DC current to AC current again, and AC current gets transmitted in AC transmission lines to the households. तो households में हमारे जो current आता है वो AC current आता है, एंड उस पूरे इकोसिस्टम में बीच में एक बहुत बड़ा पार्ट एचवीडीसी का आ जाता है. अब इसकी वजह से क्या होता है कि यू विल हैव टू कन्वर्ट द एसी इलेक्ट्रिसिटी टू डीसी इलेक्ट्रिसिटी, एंड दिस इज वेरी लार्ज इलेक्ट्रिसिटी एट अ वेरी हाई वोल्टेज. You will require very special equipments to do this, and bulk of these equipments are actually called FACTS, flexible alternative current transmission systems. So ये क्या करते हैं कि these help in conversion of AC to DC, and they also help in so जब भी एक इलेक्ट्रिसिटी ट्रांसफर होती है तो इलेक्ट्रिसिटी में बहुत सारे एट्रीब्यूट्स होते हैं अपार्ट फ्रॉम वोल्टेज। इलेक्ट्रिसिटी में वेव्स भी होती हैं, जैसे एक एनेक्डोटल एग्जांपल देता हूँ, जैसे जैसे वाटर होता है, उसमें देर इज अ वेट ऑफ द वाटर, बट देर इज ऑल्सो फ्रीक्वेंसी ऑफ द वाटर, राइट? जिस जिस फ्रीक्वेंसी पे वो मूव हो रहा है, आई डोंट नो इफ यू कैन रिलेट टू इट, बट इलेक्ट्रिसिटी में फ्रीक्वेंसी बहुत मैटर करती है अपार्ट फ्रॉम द वोल्टेज। एंड द क्वालिटी ऑफ द इलेक्ट्रिसिटी इज ऑल्सो इम्पोर्टेंट, बिकॉज जब आप इतना बड़ा कन्वर्जन कर रहे हो एसी से डीसी में, और ये सारा कन्वर्जन जो कॉर्ड्स होती हैं एंड जो वाइंडिंग वायर्स होते हैं, जो ट्रांसफार्मर्स में भी यूज होती है, CRGO coils and cores. So bulk of that disturbs the quality of the electricity, disturbs the voltage, frequency, and many other attributes of the electricity. And hence, it is very important to do FACT products. And majorly, these two FACT products are very well known, as called SVC and STATCOM. Basically, STATCOM, and these are very technical terms. I would request you to maybe Google it out or see this on YouTube. But these products are actually used to give support to voltage dips which happen while conversion, which is very important for a grid or a large integration where the integration is happening with the grid. So they will support fluctuation of voltage and fluctuation of frequencies. And actually these are semiconductor devices in themselves, because ये सारे functions इनमें automatically होते हैं. There is no manual or push button pushed by a human being, after which they work. They automatically detect the change in the frequency and voltages of electricity being transferred, and they correct it in the order of milliseconds. This is what is written in this presentation as well. And hence, government requires a lot of fact devices, including SVC, STATCOM, and there are harmonic filters, control filters. There are at least 10 more products which are used as a part of fact products exclusively for HVDC products, HVDC enablement. So fact is a subset of the overall theme of HVDC. HVDC में cables भी आएंगी, HVDC के transformers भी आएंगे, HVDC को convert करने के लिए facts भी आएंगे. Facts is a subset of HVDC. And on this slide, we actually show you, some of the projects which are, near term and medium term. And this is cost in billion INR, which means जो ये कावड़ा नागपुर का प्रोजेक्ट है, ये 28,000 करोड़ का प्रोजेक्ट है. और ये LCC टेक्नोलॉजी पे बेस्ड है. देयर आर टू टाइप्स ऑफ टेक्नोलॉजीज इन HVDC. इट्स कॉल्ड LCC एंड VSV. ये अगेन दे आर वेरी टेक्निकल इन नेचर, बट आप एक बार के लिए अभी ये समझिए कि दीज आर टू टाइप्स ऑफ टेक्नोलॉजी. एंड इंडिया में ज्यादातर टेक्नोलॉजी आई थिंक इज LCC. इट इज नॉट VSC. Some of the VSC projects are actually getting converted into LCC. बट आप देखिए एक एक प्रोजेक्ट ही 28,000 करोड़, 25,000 करोड़, 26,000 करोड़, और एक ये 12,000 करोड़ का प्रोजेक्ट है. चार में से दो प्रोजेक्ट तो खावड़ा के हैं. एंड द मीडियम टर्म पाइपलाइन इज connecting Rajasthan, which is a renewable hub of the country, to the rest of the country. So Badmer is a state in Rajasthan, Biawar is a state, Bikaner is a state, is a city in Rajasthan, and then we have Andaman, Paradeep, and Sri Lanka HVDC lines, which are yet to be coming. So ये एक बहुत बड़ा खर्चा है जो गवर्नमेंट करेगी HVDC. एंड ये सुनने में बड़ा लग रहा है, बट बिलीव मी, दिस इज चीपर देन HVAC, and that is why the government is doing this HVDC, you know, this HVDC program, which has already happened in the US, already happened in China in a big way. So इसीलिए HVDC has become a very important theme. This is also similar to higher kV. This is also, no one has produced products for HVDC क्योंकि HVDC कभी था ही नहीं in the last 50-70 years of country's existence. I think there were two or three projects which were done in the last decade or so. But now in this 5 years, every year we will be doing minimum two HVDC projects, which means around 50 to 60,000 crore of annual expenditure will be done on HVDC. This will be divided into HVDC transformers, HVDC cables, and FACTS, and some more components. And this is emerging out to be a very key theme or key investment theme. And आप देखेंगे कि HVDC को cater करने की जो listed companies हैं, they already trade at a very higher valuation because of the reason that HVDC is a very high moated business and a very high capex related business. Those companies will get a disproportionate share of revenue growth once HVDC projects come online after FY27 in India. I think I've explained facts. Again, key aspects in HVDC and MNC companies. Here we'll come to order book because I think these all those four companies which we will discuss now, four or five companies, are highly moated companies. The products which they manufacture, no one else in the world, forget India, manufactures. And hence, आप इनके P देखोगे तो someone is trading at 200 P, someone is trading at 100 P. You can't really justify those numbers, but there is a reason why they trade, and that is what we will discuss now. uh, First company, which is actually one of my favorite companies in the sector, is called Quality Power. Quality Power is the only Indian company which is manufacturing, reactors, coils, which actually will be used in HVDC. They are also manufacturing harmonic filters. And if you go to their presentation, you'll understand what products they are doing. But these products are very niche products. They will be used in HVDC ecosystem. And it's currently the only, listed HVDC component company, apart from the big fours, which we'll discuss later in this slide. So that is why, when this company got listed, very few people were able to understand what they are doing. But rest assured that the kind of products which they are making are not commodity products. These are niche products which will be used in HVDC ecosystem. Bulk of their business actually also happens in Turkey. So इस company और इस promoter का हमेशा inorganic growth और inorganic expansion का history रहा है, and they have acquired their way through, to the top now almost. In the Indian ecosystem, they've recently acquired a company called Sukrit also, which is an instrument transformer company, along with Yesh High Voltage. So दोनों niche companies हैं और दोनों ने एक और niche company को खरीदा है, which is mainly into higher kV transformers. They have an order book of 800 crore. I think their last TTM revenues would be around 500 crore. About 65% of the revenues are export related. And they are actually competing with Chinese player for global projects. So this is definitely, worth looking at. Plus, they have done a huge capex with the IPO money. So all these HVDC related products require reactors and coils, which is their main product. So they have a global coil factory in Sangli, which is in Maharashtra. They are doing a capex of 9 times. So whatever the capacity they had pre-IPO, they will increase that capacity to 9x, which will trigger, the growth in near future. Currently, HVDC related revenues are very less for this company currently, but they will increase with time after FY27 and onwards. जब HVDC के एक्चुअल में इंडिया में प्रोजेक्ट्स इंप्लीमेंट होंगे, तब इनकी HVDC रिलेटेड रेवेन्यूज आएंगे. बट अभी इनके HVDC रिलेटेड रेवेन्यूज कम है बहुत, of products like SVC, Statcom, and harmonic filters. So currently, most of the revenue are from their coil business and their Turkey business, which is Endox. So again, I'll move on to the next companies. जी वर्णोमा, जैसे हम बिग फोर बोलते हैं अकाउंटिंग फर्म्स को, वैसे ये यहाँ पे बिग थ्री आप बोल सकते हैं. जी वर्णोवा, हिटाची एंड सीमेंस एनर्जी. सो ये इंडियन आर्म है इन कंपनी का जो यहाँ पे लिस्टेड है. एंड ये जो इंडियन आर्म है ये एक्सपोर्ट भी करता है. अच्छी चीज ये है. और द मोस्ट इंटरेस्टिंग कंपनी ऑफ द स्पेस एक्चुअली इज जी वर्णोवा. क्योंकि you will get their history up till 2016. आप एक्चुअली में 2016 में जाके इस कंपनी को देखोगे तो इसका नाम था एल्स्टम। एल्स्टम टीएनडी करके कंपनी लिस्टेड थी, और उसकी पीपीटी आप खोल के देखोगे तो आपको पता लगेगा कि 2016 में पूरे सेक्टर की हालत खराब थी बहुत। एंड इन माय लास्ट पीपीटी आई हैड डिस्कस दिस एज वेल कि हालत क्यों खराब थी। इट वाज अ 4-5 years ऑफ कंसेक्यूटिव डीग्रोथ इन द पावर टीएनडी स्पेस इन इंडिया। कोरियन एंड चाइनीज सप्लायर्स वर डंपिंग देयर पावर टीएनडी प्रोडक्ट्स इन इंडिया, एंड उस टाइम पे गवर्नमेंट हैड नो पॉलिसीज। थैंक्स टू द गवर्नमेंट पॉलिसीज इंडियन प्लेयर्स को अब यू नो एक एंटी इम्पोर्ट या इंडिजनाइजेशन का एक मुहिम चालू हुआ, जिसकी वजह से इंडियन कंपनीज गॉट बेनिफिटेड, वरना we were not able to compete with Korean and Chinese suppliers in India in 2016. So I think they are also doing a very big capex of 800 crore rupees. This is almost equal or higher to their current gross block. तो ये जो करंट ग्रॉस ब्लॉक है उससे बड़ा केपेक्स कर रहे हैं, तो अज्यूम दैट रेवेन्यूज विल बी मोर देन डबल पीक रेवेन्यूज फ्रॉम दिस केपेक्स। GE के साथ एक प्रॉब्लम है, and that is also reflected in their PE valuation, that they do not have any HVDC order currently in their order book, versus Hitachi, who has a HVDC order, a very large HVDC order, should I say. But apart from that, they are like a very marquee company, and they almost supply जो सबस्टेशन में जो इक्विपमेंट चाहिए होते हैं, अपार्ट फ्रॉम केबल्स एंड अपार्ट फ्रॉम ट्रांसफॉर्मर्स, substation is a fairly large portion of the overall T&D spend. And substation में जो चीजें चाहिए होती हैं, and a lot of equipments, believe me, a substation has more than 500 types of equipments to manage the electricity flow, uh, and inputs and outputs of that substation. GE Vernovas of the world, Hitachi, Siemens of the world, they manufacture these critical products. And apart from that, there is only one company, which is CG Power, which is also considered a MNC company nowadays, going by the valuation which they have currently. So moving on to Hitachi, इन तीनों कंपनीज में सबसे फेवरेबली जो HVDC थीम से एक्सपोज्ड कंपनी है वो हिटाची है, क्योंकि आई थिंक जस्ट फॉर HVDC दे हैव अ 10,000 crore order book. They are executing 3 HVDC orders currently, and they Quality Power Management told to us that they are actually also supplying some of the products to Hitachi, because Hitachi is the only player who's getting all the HVDC orders currently. Also, there is a problem with the other company, which we'll come to it later, Siemens. Siemens only works in VSC, while Hitachi works in both the technology, which is LCC and VSV, which are both the technologies used in India. Currently, only LCC is being used in India. So Hitachi is present because of LCC in India. They are also doing a very large capex of 2,000 crore. But at these kind of valuations, I really don't have a clue, or I don't have a view at 200 current type of P. I think P's would have derated now. So we'll look at the latest numbers later in this slide. Next company is CG Power. CG Power actually बहुत सारे काम करता है. Apart from transformer manufacturing and making some other products, they are not mainly into any HVDC products, but they are into some industrial systems. तो ये motor भी बनाते हैं, which is used in industrial products. So this is not actually a T&D play. Why we have included it? Because we wanted to compare it with all the other MNCs, and CG Power is also considered like a MNC company. I would not advise to look at this company for power T&D angle, although their current order book has around growth of around 80%, but a large portion of their current order book is from non-power T&D related, which is the industrial systems part of the business. They are a very good power transformer company, so they do manufacture. They have an overall capacity of 45,000 MVA, and they will be actually, after the capex, they will be at 85,000 MV, and they also, like Trill, are present more in the higher kV side of things, and hence they have a capacity of more than Trill. Actually, even after Trill's capex, they will be having more than Trill. But again, this is a different market cap, different MNC type of setup this company has. Moving to our last company of the HVDC ecosystem is Siemens Energy. अगेन अ वेरी वेरी मार्की कंपनी, बट इस कंपनी के साथ भी वही प्रॉब्लम है कि ये सिर्फ वीएससी एचवीडीसी मार्केट को केटर करता है, एलसीसी मार्केट को केटर नहीं करता है, और उसकी वजह से हिटाची को सारा एचवीडीसी का जो इंडियन ऑर्डर बुक है वो सारा हिटाची को जा रहा है, और इनको कुछ भी नहीं मिल रहा है. तो this is the problem with this company, and this is also fairly reflected in valuations. I think HVDC, Hitachi has the highest valuation of these three. इन तीनों कंपनीज के साथ एक एडिशनल प्रॉब्लम मैं और बताना चाहूंगा. इन तीनों कंपनीज की पेरेंट कंपनीज आर इंटरनेशनल कंपनीज who होल्ड शेयर होल्डिंग इन these respective companies, and they do take a royalty payment of a certain percentage of their revenues, typically 1 to 2 to 5% of their revenues जो पेरेंट कंपनी है वो एज रॉयल्टी ले जाती है. तो we as minority shareholders are deprived of the full value creation in these Indian arms of these companies. So this is the problem of investing in MNC companies also. I think coming to valuation, you will see, Hitachi का सबसे ज्यादा P क्यों है? Simple reason is they are into HVDC ecosystem versus GE Vernova and CG Power. For a very brief while, Quality Power was actually trading at a very high multiple. Now it has come down to reasonable levels, but still very high. I think out of all these companies, Quality Power has a problem of working capital. I think this year should be a trackable year in terms of working capital and cash flows for this company. But definitely out of all these companies, Quality Power seems to be a fundamentally, good company. Although I would really say that fundamentally all four are very, very solid companies. Hitachi definitely is better. But if you don't want to invest in MNC companies and you want to look into HVDC ecosystem, there's literally only Quality Power. So that is why Quality Power remains our fundamentally strongest company in the sector. Overall outlook, I think there's a lot of demand which HVDC will see in the next 1 or 2 years. And जब HVDC के ऑर्डर आएंगे तब वो बहुत बड़े ऑर्डर्स होंगे. जैसे मैंने आपको दिखाया, एक सिंगल ऑर्डर 25 से 30 हजार करोड़ का होता है, और अगर किसी साल में दो ऑर्डर आते हैं तो एकदम से 60,000 करोड़ ऑफ ऑर्डर बुक is up for grabs by only selected players. You can actually count on fingers these four players. And I think cables के orders universal cables को मिलेंगे. I think transformers के orders CG Power और to a certain level Trill को मिल सकते हैं, क्योंकि Trill also recently did a repair maintenance work of a HVDC transformer. So it is an expectation that they might get that. But it's ginti ki, I think you can only count on fingers. There are 5, 6, 7 companies who will cater to 60,000 crore of order book annually. And that is why those companies are, getting valued the way they are getting valued. High PE and all that. Uh, so I think fundamentally strong companies I've already told, although all four companies are very, very strong. This is an Indian company, and I would really look up to an Indian company to compete with the big fours, of the world. So I think with this, we can conclude our today's session. I hope this was useful to you. Today, we had discussed about transformer companies, cable companies, and HVDC companies. In the next part of this sector presentation, we will be talking about EPC companies like Oriana, like Rajesh Power, like Transrail, some other component manufacturing companies. And then we will be discussing about two very interesting themes, which is called battery energy storage systems and smart meters in our next catch up whenever we do that. I think in a week's time or in 2 weeks' time. And we will be discussing about the remaining part, and this will, I think, will be the last presentation on the power T&D sector. So I hope this was very, very useful to everyone. How we have structured is, जो पहला था उससे एक हमने base बनाया. We tried to really understand what's happening in the space on a basic level, macro level. Today it was all micro. It was all about companies. What do we look at different companies? कोई क्यों अच्छा है और कोई क्यों उतना अच्छा नहीं है? फ्यूचर में कौन ज्यादा कमोडिटी हो जाएगा वर्सेस कौन एक मोटेड बिजनेस है, how to look at working capital margins, how to look at HVDC, which is a very famous word right now, very talked about word right now. Uh, how to look at, cable companies, which are actually considered commodity, but I don't think they are commodity. Uh, and in the next part, we will actually be discussing about BESS, smart meters, along with EPC companies and component companies. So with this, happy to conclude